if you would, join me in recognizing that the man that really started this all, by God's grace, Frank Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Brownback. I appreciate it very much. I want to thank the Trump-Pence administration. I want to thank Secretary of State Pompeo. I want to thank Ambassador Brownback and all of the State Department employees who worked to put this ministerial to advance international religious freedom on. I also want to thank all of you for attending and for all the good work that you do. Many of you know the words of the song, The Boxer, that Simon and Garfunkel sang in Central Park. It says, man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. There are the cries of the persecuted that we are refusing to hear. The Bible has much to say about persecution, oppression, and ultimately freedom. In Ecclesiastes 4:1, it says, again, I looked, I saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. Religious freedom is deeply embedded in our own legal tradition, reaching all the way back to the Magna Carta. But it's also understood as a necessity for human dignity by the international community. As it says in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, by God, and they are endowed by God with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are known by people. When I go to other countries, they're known by people all over the world. They were known by the students in Tiananmen during the demonstration. You remember when they made the Statue of Liberty there. Religious freedom is a universal value worth protecting, but often abused. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 18, states explicitly, quote, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his or her religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others, in public or private, to manifest his or her religion and belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. I stand before you today with a grave and a growing sense of urgency regarding the erosion of religious freedom around the globe. All over this world, people are denied the fundamental and unalienable human right to confess and express their beliefs according to the dictates of their conscience. According to the Pew polling data, nearly 80% of the world's population, over 5.5 billion people, at this very moment when we sit here in this building, live in a religiously repressive nation. The task is urgent. The stakes are high. What remains to be seen is whether people of goodwill will rise to the occasion for such a time like this. Throughout my career, I've borne witness to the tragic state of religious persecution as a daily reality for so many people all over the world. From China to Iran, from Pakistan to North Korea to Burma, the face of repression varies, but the outcome is the same: harassment, fear, imprisonment, and even death, simply because of what a person believes. Just look around the world today. The Rohingya in Burma, I believe, are facing genocide, and the world is relatively silent. Christian and Yazidis in Iraq were victims. They were victims of genocide. And 3,000 young Yazidi girls are still being held by ISIS. and Yazidi mass graves have not yet been excavated. The Baha'is in Iran are being persecuted and imprisoned. In Nigeria, 21,000 Christians and many Muslims have been killed, and over 900 churches have been destroyed. And we see growing anti-Semitism around the world, even here at times in the United States. There are many other situations that you in this room know about. In China alone, we see the Catholic Church being coerced and Catholic bishops disappearing. Congressman Chris Smith, who took Holy Communion from Bishop Hsu several years ago, Bishop Hsu has never been seen again. Protestant pastors and house church leaders are being jailed. Buddhist monks and nuns are setting themselves on fire to protest the cultural genocide in Tibet. Every place of worship in Tibet has a public security police monitoring the place. Every place, and there are cameras watching the Tibetan monks and nuns as they enter and as they leave. And hundreds of thousands of Uyghur Muslims, including children, are being taken from their homes and placed in re-education camps. This, I believe, speaking for myself, I believe this is reminiscent of the times of Mao, of Stalin, and Nazis. And yet the world is silent. The Falun Gong are facing severe persecution, and there are actual reports of organ harvesting where they kill them and they take the organs for sale. Should we not today be burdened by the great injustice of religious persecution taking place around the world? Those who are persecuted can at times, I know, seem distant from the halls of government and from our churches and synagogues and mosques. But these people, they yearn for our prayers and they cry out. They cry out for our attention. For me, as a follower of Jesus, Scripture gives little choice but to respond to the oppression. The book of The book of Hebrews enjoins us to, quote, remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who were mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. And the Old Testament book of Isaiah says, and if you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry, and you satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will shine in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. I am convinced, personally, that as those being persecuted become more than faceless, nameless victims in distant wars and hard-to-pronounce prison cells, and as we commit to knowing their stories, weeping at their wounds, and interceding on their behalf with prayer and advocacy, that we will find ourselves shaped by these men and women. The Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, which I think is one of the most powerful documents ever written here in the United States, was written to his fellow clergymen. Dr. King said the following. He said, injustice anywhere is a threat everywhere. He said, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. He went on to say, we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given up by the oppressors. He said it must be demanded by the oppressed. Dr. King went on to say, he said, there comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men and women are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of injustice where they experience the bleakness of corroding despair. Waiting for the right time is not an option. The Rohingya in the camps of Burma and Ambassador Brownback saw them. They cannot wait. The Yazidi girl who has been assaulted and sold and is still in ISIS captivity cannot wait. The Coptic Christian who is being persecuted in certain places cannot wait. The Catholic Pakistani woman who we all know the name, Asia Bibi, who has been in prison for 8 years, she cannot wait. The Chibok mother in Nigeria whose daughter is still being held captive by Boko Haram cannot wait. 4 years ago, it was hashtag bring back our girls. This past April, 4 years ago, almost nobody did hashtag bring back our girls, and yet almost 50% of the girls have not come back. The Tibetan monks and nuns imprisoned in a notorious dropship prison in Lhasa cannot wait. And the Christian community that Ambassador Brownback saw 2 weeks ago in Iraq that have fallen from 1.5 million in 2003 and is now at 200,000 cannot wait. And listening to Pastor Brunson's daughter, Pastor Brunson, I say to our friends in Turkey, Pastor Brunson cannot wait. When asked why he continually spoke out against injustice, Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel said, "If I remain silent," he said, "I may help my own soul, but because I do not help other people, I poison my soul." He says, silence never helps the victim. It only helps the victimizers. What a powerful statement. Silence never helps the victim. It only helps the victimizers. In fact, silence actually encourages the wrongdoer to continue their acts of violence. In the 18th century, one of my heroes, British parliamentarian William Wilberforce, said this to his fellow countrymen about the evils of the slave trade. Wilberforce said, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you do not know." Dr. King said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Are we not the friends of the persecuted?" A quote often attributed to German Luther pastor and anti-Nazi dissident Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, "Silence in the face of evil is evil itself." He said, not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. So, after attending this ministerial, we can never again say we did not know. When we leave today, let us commit that we will speak and we will act. Thank you very, very much.